Hey guys, and welcome to a showdown between two fearsome competitors. On the left-hand side, we do have Killer Runo leading the forces of the Dark Elves here up against RTK's very own Achilles. Two very powerful combatants, and it is a grudge match. We have Dark Elves facing off against the High Elves in the Battle of the Pointy Ears. And not only that, this is going to be a battle of the heavy cavalry. Both these guys invest in pretty expensive troops in that cavalry contingent. So let's have a little breakdown of the builds though before we do hop into this. So for the force of the Dark Elves, we have Dread Spears and Bleak Swords dotted along the front line. The spears on the flank to help protect up against cavalry engagements. Pretty standard stuff, cheap, cheerful, happy to be here, and help grind through the elite High Elf forces. In the back here, we do have a nice triple Reaper Bolt Thrower. Reaper Bolt Throwers, of course, can do lovely damage from long range. Will suffer up against Repeater Bolt Fire back as well, but it looks like they are going to have the advantage of range, at least to start with, until those archers do close ranks. We also have triple Cold One Dread Knights. This is as badass and as rock and roll as it does get. Cold One Dread Knights, in my opinion, are a little bit too expensive for what they do. They have the similar problem as the Horned ones, that they do rampage, and having a unit so expensive which rampages can be a big problem. But at the same time, with effective micro, they can cause absolute havoc. Leading the contingent of cavalry, we do have Malekith down on his own Cold One Knight. So instead of going for the Mighty Dragon, we've gone a little bit cheaper. Coming in with Gaze of Malice, Stand Your Ground, as well as Soul Stealer, so a nice cheap little toolkit. And in the distance, we do have the Doom Fire Warlocks, of course, come with a couple of bound spells. These are not the Regiment Renowned version, which are more often seen, but instead we have Soul Blight and the Lesser Doombolt. Pretty awesome build all around, I like it quite a bit. Neither for the forces of the High Elves in their own front line. It is going to be a grind match as spears will be poking against spear wall, which in reality would be really ferocious and horrible to be in. But in Total War Warhammer, these guys are literally going to be bumping up against each other. In the next battle line, we do have Lothran Sea Guard, who are a pretty decent pick as well in case Dark Rise try to whip in around the flanks. These guys can pressure them away with their spears and do a decent amount of long range damage themselves. We have double Dragon Princes, the elite counter to the Dread Knights here. These guys do have martial prowess, decent armor at 110, and of course come in with martial prowess, fire resistance of 70% and physical resistance of 20%. So they are pretty scary, and there is two of them here. Leading the battle line, we have a noble on chariot who is completely naked, and up in the skies we have a mighty star dragon, the beast of myth and legend. Should be able to get some really good breath attacks down either on the bolt throws or the dread knights. And leading the force, we have Alariel the Radiant Escort and her pet dragon, coming in with Star of Avalon, as well as Arcane Conduit, Tempest, Earthblood, and Far's Protection. Now, of course, the number superiority in cavalry does go Dark Elf favoured, but Alariel comes in with that counter-punch of being able to heal up her own Dragon Princes, and the fact there's a big, fat, scary Star Dragon on the field also can wreak havoc. Looks like the bolt throws are unleashing hell now upon the Lothran Sea Guard, who are being pressured quite badly here, as the spread shot does some really nice damage. Dread Spears do start to advance with the Bleak Swords to meet the Spearmen in combat, but in comes the Noble going straight down the middle into those Cold One Dread Knights. Real risky attack. Looks like he wanted to whip around and punish the Bleak Swords from the back. But he's now getting swarmed by Dread Knights as well as Malekith. A big fat breath attack down here could do absolutely horrendous damage, although it looks like the bolt throw did receive one instead. And all of a sudden, all this artillery is completely shut off line. Star Dragon taking down one piece, and elsewhere the bolt throw is taking big damage now from the Lothran Sea Guard fire, and the Dread Knights are having to pull back away from the frontline engagements as Spearmen and Swordsmen do just engage and kind of bump up against each other. It should favour the Dark Elves because they do have more Swordsmen, and in come the Dragon Princes with a thunderous charge. But in the back lines, things are getting a little bit scary. Alariel did dart down to shut down one of the bolt throws, and she managed to do that successfully. And look at her wiggle. She's like somehow sneaking through a bucket ton of Cold One Dread Knights. Really fantastic play by Achilles, bringing her back to her own lines and then bringing her through the Spearmen. Is going to force these Dread Knights into the spears, which of course isn't where they want to be. Noble is going to support as well to help get her out of trouble. But in the back lines, the Star Dragon, not so lucky, being completely surrounded by cavalry at this point, is getting a Star of Avalon to heal up. 16 kills on him, but huge damage now coming from the Dread Knights as well as Doomfire Warlocks. Bolt Thrower could, even if he really wanted, turn and shoot this beast right in the face of those spread shots, because every hit is going to make contact. Dragon Prince is doing a fantastic job cycle charging the front line, slowly beating down the Bleak Swords and allowing the Spearmen to actually win engagements they would otherwise lose. And it looks like they did that on this flank as well. Dragon Princes can now flood into the back line, shutting down this Reaper Bolt Thrower, and the Spearmen have now punished the Bleak Swords before starting to wrap and envelop the remainder of the Dark Elf front line. So front line certainly going very High Elf favoured, but this back line is an absolute nightmare. The Star Dragon barely done any damage at this point and is still stuck down here on the ground surrounded. And Earthblood and Far's Protection are going to keep him nice and tanky. If only there was a big pendulum or Comet Cassador or something to come down on these guys. That'd be really disgusting value. But in come the Spearmen, and this is a really actual good situation now for the Star Dragon. Yes, it's been attacked quite heavily, but we have Dragon Princess getting the charge in, Spearmen getting the charge in, Noble getting the charge in, and all of a sudden the Cold One Dread Knights are slowly starting to become overwhelmed, and the Star Dragon can flee for its own troops once more. Dread Spears are getting finished off in the front line due to good cycle charging from the Dragon Princes. Lothra and Seaguard have taken quite a big pounding at this point, but they have done some good damage raining in fire, and there's not too much to hurt them left anymore, although one of the bolt throws has been a little bit sneaky and trying to come back. But the main fight is going over here in the big blob. Looks like the Dragon did decide to fall back away from its own troops, which is a little bit of a mistake, as now it is completely surrounded once more, and it has allowed the Dread Knights to disengage from the Spearmen, and this certainly is going to be a dead Star Dragon. Now the Mighty Beast struggling on. It looks like Fire's Protection has gone down once more on top of him, but he will be breaking, and now probably getting clawed to death in the back from the Cold One Dread Knights. Not a good day for him whatsoever, and somehow, by some kind of miracle, the Dark Elf player has managed to keep his Bolt Thrower online and active, which is really good play by him, as it can do a ton of damage as a big fat Soul Sealer does come down, and it looks like we're getting a Soul Blight as well. Swordsmen are kind of mixed up amongst all these Dread Spears with the Dragon Princes, and it's just a big mess in the centre, but it's not the worst situation for the High Elves. Even though they lost their Dragon, the Lothra and Seaguard are now just raining in shot after shot, and the Dark Elves don't have any healing, unlike the forces of the High Elves. In the distance, fantastic micro here by Killaruno, using his Doomfire Warlocks just to chase off and finish off the Dragon. It's down to 79 health, 27 health, and the Mighty Beast does fall. Got a really nice breath attack early on, but then just couldn't get back up into the skies, which is always what I do with my Dragons as well. I tend to get them killed by getting them just stuck in against too many cavalry options. And now the Dread Knights are going to isolate a single unit of Dragon Princes, but a nice counter punch come in. Star of Avalon is active, and this other unit of Dragon Princes can now start to slam home. Although it looks like they are going to support Alariel trying to break up these Bleak Swords, although Malekith is going to be here, and he is angry. The Dark Elf pushes his way through his own troops, driving his Velociraptor to greater feats of speed and heroism, hunting down Alariel, and it looks like she is going to be a little bit trapped here, but she is rather squishy. But also at the same time a little bit sketchy and hard to actually pin in, being a bit slippery. Maybe able to force her way out here if some of these Dread Knights do break. Looks like they're holding for now. Stand Your Ground has been popped by Malekith, and all of a sudden she is in big trouble. Dragon Princes are trying to support with the Spearmen, and the Noble is shutting down the Bolt Thrower crew at the moment. In the back line we do have Dread Spears chasing down two units of Lothra and Seaguard, who are now splitting so they can counter fire, and it looks like some Bleak Swords did finish off chasing off some Spearmen before coming back to the fray once more. Doomfire Warlocks need to be a bit careful. Spearmen are popping it in on them, and Dragon Princes will be slaughtering them to the last man if they're not too careful. Although this other unit of Dragon Princes has now been sacrificed in order to save the Pigeon Queen, who did manage to get just about back up in the skies. Archon Conduit has been popped, and a nice Gaze of Malice is going down in the distance on the Lothra and Seaguard. Going to do some okay damage. It was actually a really small kind of cast range, so it needs to be a little bit closer to actually make contact. At this point though, if Alariel just simply stays in the air, I think the High Elves probably have this. Lothra and Seaguard mixed in with Spearmen and Dragon Princes can help finish off the infantry, and the cavalry is so beat up at this point. It'd be Malekith versus the world. But if Alariel keeps coming down for charges like this, which are really tempting because the Bleak Swords are so weak and you can round them off, she's going to be constantly getting slammed into by Malekith, as well as any of the remaining Dread Knights who can disengage, and that is going to be huge problems, and it looks like it's coming back to bite him quite badly. Alariel down to 890 health, needs to escape and get back up in the air as quickly as possible, and just allow his Seaguard to use up their ammunition and win the day for the forces of light and the High Elves. And it looks like the Cold Dread Knights have just about given up at this point. One unit rout, the second unit is wavering, although they've done a decent job on the Dragon Princes, who are down to just 11 troops left. The Noble is full health and get a lovely rear charge into the Bleak Swords, which should free up the Lothra and Seaguard to rain hell down upon the enemy from afar once more. Although the Doomfire Warlocks have managed to just about rally, Alara might be able to go over here, say hello, and push them off once more. Spearmen are coming in now to intercept the Dread Spears as well as Malekith, and it looks like the Lothra and Seaguard are pretty much out of ammunition, at least the big healthy unit in the distance who needs to engage in combat, but there is more troops coming back, and 17 archers at this stage in such a close fight can really pay pretty big dividends. Lothra and Seaguard raining fire in now from point blank range. If they miss this, they lose their right to be Elves. In the distance, Alariel just manages to shatter off some Cold One Dread Knights. Balance power is, though, slightly in favour of the Dark Elves due to the low health of Alariel, but with the Noble just bouncing around between these combats, squishing the Dark Elves under heel and cloven foot, I suppose, as well as wheels and scythes. it's looking like a good day for them as they push through these Dread Knights. And in the back lines, once more, Alarielle trying to snipe out some Dread Knights, but this unit is a little bit more made of more sterner stuff, especially when led by Malekith. And Alarielle is fleeing for her life. Run, pigeon, run! As she does, Waddle takes a huge hit to the back, and with that, it looks like the game has completely turned on its head. Alarielle goes down. Malekith gets that Alarielle pigeon booty at last, and now he can drag his troops over, and all of a sudden the leadership of the High Elves is wavering. It's certainly not game over yet with this noble being so healthy, but they have nothing really to take down Malekith apart from cycle charging. And without Alarielle to heal up these troops, it could be all game over as the Cold Ones come for not so much of a thunderous charge, more of a slumberous bobble into combat, and the noble counter punches them pretty well with his halberdier, doing some nice damage and slaying a few of those mighty elite knights. Not many Cold One Dread Knights will be able to survive this battle, but they certainly performed rather well. Malekith does come down with a Soul Sealer, and that should finish off the High Elves as the balanced power pushes into Army Loss's range. And this noble, dreaming of great things, dreaming of taking down the Dark Prince himself, but it is but just a dream, and he decides to flee from the Dark Lord himself. A Pyrrhic victory, but very well played to these two champions here. Killaruno and Achilles, both really top talented players, good tournament players all round, and a really fun game with some elite cavalry. So before we get into all the stats, hope you guys did enjoy. If you did, feel free to give the video a big old thumbs up and subscribe for more Total War Warhammer content. We do drop a new video every single day, as well as a couple of streams, 2 to 3 a week. If you want to support the channel in any other way, I have a link to Patreon, Discord, all that good standard YouTube stuff just down below in the description. But anyway, Achilles nearly managed to pull it off. I think a big mistake at the end by popping in Alarielle. I liked her popping onto some of the weaker targets to shatter them, but it was really risky jumping on top of those Cold One Dread Knights. He still had a pretty much full health unit of Lothran Seaguard who could have saturated on the rest of his troops, and then just cycle charge of that noble, perhaps to victory. But I understand as well, you know, trying to get Alarielle in there to try to turn the tide of the battle in his favour. Unfortunately, she got very little limited damage value and damage dealt, but she's there for those stars and the healing. The star on the dragon obviously kept it fighting way longer than it would have realistically been for, and it only managed to get, well, pretty decent 1,500 damage value, considering it was trapped for so long, but had 2 breath attacks. So if you could get one more time back up into the air and just breath attack the blob of Dread Knights, it probably would have been game over as well. But that was due to good, persistent, annoying, I'm sure for Achilles, strategies from Killaruno of just surrounding the dragon every time it tried to escape, and then when it tried pulling away from its own troops, it then got surrounded and dragged down for good. The noble did some fantastic work though, nearly 2,000 damage value and over 10,000 damage dealt, a real MVP for the High Elf forces. Of course, Spearmen aren't going to be doing crazy stuff. The Lothran Seaguard did relatively decent as well, particularly these two units who managed to rack up an impressive 1,000 damage value on both of them, 1,300 here in fact, and solid kills across the board, aiming to drag down those Cold One Dread Knights. And the Dragon Princes did very well, both getting over 1,000 damage value, 8,000 and 9.8 thousand damage dealt. But how did their Cold One Dread Knight counterpart fare? Pretty well, actually. This one managed to get 1,100 damage value, here 1,800, which is pretty insane, and then 1,600. So it certainly does prove that. I did a video a while ago on heavy infantry and why I didn't think it was particularly amazing in Total War. It still could, you know, definitely be amazing in certain matchups and certain scenarios, but as an overview, I didn't think elite infantry was fantastic, but elite cavalry, on the other hand, I think certainly has a much bigger place now. It still has to be a little bit careful. 1 or 2 dragon breath attacks coming down the line, or pendulums, especially when they blob up, could have just ripped them apart and done so much damage value. But because they can pin in single entity monsters, unlike elite infantry, I think they're far more valuable. And we saw them pinning that dragon as well as, you know, counterattack infantry and enemy cavalry. So doing a good job throughout there. The Reaper Bolt throws themselves didn't do particularly well, although they did manage to apply some early pressure to the Lothran Seaguard, which I guess managed to take away some of the bows which were raining down fire. But it was really the enemy build that kind of was a bit unfortunate for these guys here. Doomfire Warlocks did pretty solid as well, 1,500 damage value, and of course the Dread Spears and Bleak Swords, much like the Lothran Seaguard and Spearmen of the High Elves, weren't really there to do too much damage. Malekith himself, the Dark Prince, upgrading himself to the Dark King, 10,000 damage dealt, 3,500 damage value, slaughtering Alarielle in personal 1-to-1 combat. Anyway guys, hope you enjoyed. Until next time, peace, and as always, stay awesome.